I had spoken to Michael and I had spoken to Jerry, and both guys said they wanted to sit down and wanted to get together and talk, and I obviously am going to do that. Obviously things have changed, with Arturis and Mark, and you go into the year and go through the season thinking that, we're all going to kind of go through it together. That's changed. So I think they probably want to talk about, what the plan is going forward, what the thoughts are, all those kind of things. And I think that with our team, I can share my opinions, my thoughts, and I think we'll sit down and talk. We've always done that after every year,
right,
of how we can get better and those kind of things. But, I haven't had necessarily any conversation, after the situation with Mark and Arturis about any plans going forward or anything else other than, Billy, let's just get together after the season, focus on the season, and we'll talk after. And that's kind of where it got left.
Is there are you guys talking tomorrow, or are you guys?
No. Tomorrow I'm going to spend time with the players. We'll get back tonight, and then we'll do some things as a team, just team meeting wise, and then there'll be some individual meetings. Those guys have physicals. So my guess is it will be probably sometime during this upcoming week. Yes.
And is it something where you feel like, obviously your family's important to you, that you are going to take some time and talk to your family, or do you just need to hear a couple certain things and you feel already leaning one way or the other? No, I feel pretty good. This isn't something that, is going to have to carry on or go a certain amount of point. I mean, do you want to make a quick decision and say, hey, I'm either all in, or, hey, I'm just not feeling it?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is I feel like I need to do that for the organization, for everybody moving forward, and certainly listen to what they have to say. The one thing that, as difficult as it was, that I went through, during the All-Star break, and I mean this with all respect, my family's not going to necessarily have anything to do with the decision. They've been incredibly supportive, and it would be more my internal, with my mom and her situation. That would be something that I would want to do. It wouldn't be a situation where I'm feeling a sense of family pressure that, hey, listen, can you go, take some time? We've gone through some of these difficulties. They've never put me in that situation. I'm grateful for that. So if it was anything to do with the family, it would totally be on me.
And kind of to that point, who are like the touchstones in your life that you go to when you have kind of like a big decision to make? Who are the people that you kind of lean on to have those conversations with?
I talk to my wife. I think when there's, decisions to be made or conversations to be had, the one thing that ends up happening is the only person that's living with any decision is myself or anybody else. You know what I mean? So people can have their thoughts and ideas or whatever it is, but, I'm in the situation. I've said this before. Michael and Jerry have been, obviously great to work with. I love the organization, the people I work with all the way throughout the building. So really, I think when a decision's made, I'm the one that ultimately says, Lewis, some people could sit there and say, hey, do this, this, and this. And then, they go into their own life and then I'm living with it. So ultimately it's got to come from where I feel like in my heart. And then also I think, listening to, okay, these things happened, in the beginning of April. Now we've had, I don't know what it was, maybe 5-6 games since that's happened, maybe less. And now it's like, okay, what's the next step organizationally? And I think that's the conversation we're all going to sit down and have.
Monis told us about when the decision was made to fire Arturis and Mark, that he called you because he was away from the team and sick, and just kind of, he told us that he was very emphatic of wanting you to come back, just feeling like you're a cornerstone of his career is kind of what he said. What are those conversations like for you, having a young player, especially like Monis, kind of give you that pitch and say, hey, like I want to kind of be able to build with you?
No, I appreciate it. I love Monis and love all the guys. And that was my thing, when this whole thing happened, at the trade deadline with all these guys coming, even though it was a short runway for our team, like I got a lot of respect. Listen, I was not a great player and didn't have any level of career, but I know what it's like, trying to make an NBA team and go through that and your dream and your goal. So I've always tried to invest in those guys. And going back to Monis, we've had a great relationship. I think it's been pretty well documented. I've pushed him pretty hard. I think he feels like he needs that and wants that. And I really, really appreciate the conversation. Quite honestly, I think it's been a lot for Monis, just being a young player going through all the guys that he was close with. Because I don't know if people really understand the investment Vooch made into him, Kobe made into him, Ayo made into him. And then all of a sudden that's gone and he's got maybe missing some player direction. And then it goes from him being directed as a young player. And now I'm pushing him into hey, you need to lead right now. You need to take over and lead. So it's been a lot for him. And I appreciate the call. We had a good conversation. And, we talked, and I want to see him continue to grow and develop, and so, like, again, I just appreciate the call and appreciate the conversation. He's a great guy, and I've loved working with him.
Billy, to your point about the decision that you have to live with, you and I talked at the Hall of Fame about how you navigated that really difficult situation 20 years ago with the Orlando job. Is there anything you learned from that experience that you might use?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I think that probably back then, you have a lot of. I don't know how old I was at that point in time, but, was getting hit in a lot of different directions, and then when I made the decision, I think that, the Magic didn't do anything wrong. They were great to me, but there was this something inside of me that said this is wrong, and could I have been influenced by other people? Maybe, but that's what ended up happening. Like all of a sudden the phone stops ringing, it's dead silence, and I'll never forget, I got a call from Stu Jackson. He was working in the league office, and Stu coached me in college. And he goes, "Welcome to the NBA. This is a different world than college," And, I had to sit there, and I slept that night and woke up. I said, this is just not right. I need to try to correct this. And actually the one guy that gave me the best advice going through it was CM Newton, because he had told me that he left Alabama as the head coach and thought he wanted to get into administration, took a job in the league office at the SEC. And he felt like he made a mistake, but because he gave his word, he felt like he needed to follow through on it. And he said he knew it was wrong. And he said like a year later, he was back in coaching. That was the hard part for me, is when I gave Orlando my word and was going back on it. But I didn't think it was right for Orlando, knowing how I felt, not to be transparent on it. So, those things, I think as you get older, you go through some of these situations, you really, I think, try to get more in tune with yourself, And then the other part of it too is I've got great respect for Jerry. I've learned a lot from Jerry. He's filled with a bunch of wisdom and knowledge just over the years talking to him. And I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed my conversations, with Michael as well. And I love being in Chicago, and I love the organization and everything about it, but we're at this pivot point right now where everything's changed, So for me to have to sit down and have a conversation, that's really what I want to do, just to find out where we're all at on this and how we're going to move forward.
Billy, you mentioned discussing the direction of the franchise. If you're going to be part of it, what direction would you prefer? How would you prefer the franchise to try to return to?
Yeah. I would probably, and I agree with this. I agreed with this comment. I think Michael said that he wants to build something that's sustainable, and I agree with that. That it needs to be something that's going to be long term. Where maybe you want as many cracks at the apple in the playoffs to try to advance and move on. And what's the exact way to go about doing that? Some of this stuff could end up changing in May with what went on in terms of people trying to go through the draft and get players that way, and go through this process for 3 or 4 years and try to get some good young talent and those guys develop and grow together. I think that's probably a strategy team, decision in terms of what that looks like, who the person is coming in, what their idea of that is. But I do agree with Michael that you have to do something. We're going to try to build something for sustained, success. And I'm not the smartest guy in the room to say, this is the way you go about doing it. I think that's what these conversations are of, hey, listen, how long do we have to go through continuing to build? I think we've got some good young players in the organization. We've got a lot of free agents to deal with. We'll see where we pick, on the draft. But there's got to be a building process that's got to go through it, and I'm not sitting here saying I have all the answers, but I do agree you want to try to build something that's sustainable.
Will your decision be influenced at all by what other openings available?
No. I mean, my commitment and my loyalty is to the Bulls. I'm employed by them. I work for them. The relationship with Jerry and Michael, I had a great relationship with Mark and Arturis, my staff, everything else. No, I'm going to, I'm committed here to Chicago, and I love Chicago. So it's not going to be anything about that at all. There was, I'm not going to get through it, but there was different opportunities that have been up over the last couple of years that I just didn't even entertain or look at, just because I didn't feel like it was right. I'm trying to be where my feet are planted and stay there and stay committed to where I'm at.
Well, just with the fact that there isn't like a GM in place right now, it seems like it might be hard for them to come up with a path or an answer for how you're going to get there. Do you feel like you can make that decision independent of what that path is, or is that something you're going to need to wait until there's somebody in place and they can define the direction and then you
Well, I think that, in talking to probably Jerry and Michael, they would probably say this is what they were looking for. This is how we want to go. This is what we think. I'm sure that they're going to interview the candidates, right? So there's going to be certain things I would think that ownership is looking for and looking at to help the organization move forward. So I do think that being able to speak about that would be helpful. I do think all these situations in every NBA organization, there's a lot of people. Like, it really takes a lot in terms of everybody kind of rowing the boat in the same direction. But I do think that there'll be some time after the season before anybody's hired to say, listen, this is what we're thinking about doing. This is how we're thinking about going forward, and I think that certainly would, give you at least some idea of what the direction would be.